This is the story of a shattered illusion, a meticulously planned constitutional hijacking, and a queen forced to confront her own irrelevance in front of the entire world. In the fraction of a second it took for the heavy glass doors of the Buckingham Palace balcony to swing open, Queen Camilla's grand vision of absolute supremacy evaporated into the humid London air. She had stepped forward, expecting to present herself as the undisputed co-monarch, surrounded by the carefully curated faces of her own extended family. What she realized instead, as the deafening roar of the crowds washed over her and the cameras instantly pivoted away, was a cold and devastating truth. You can control the back channels, you can manage the king's diary, and you can demand the bows behind closed doors. But you cannot force the ancient machinery of the British state to legitimize a bloodline that does not belong. What this video will unpack is the hidden high-stakes warfare that just erupted within the core of the monarchy during its most vulnerable hour. We are going to expose the secret shadow regency Camilla attempted to establish while the king was compromised, how Prince William uncovered her sprawling administrative overreach, and the silent, ruthless institutional retaliation that followed. By the end of this analysis, you will understand the profound difference between the temporary illusion of absolute power and the staggering, inescapable reality of commercial desperation when the actual sovereign authority decides to close the door. To understand the sheer magnitude of this visual humiliation, we must first rebuild the formidable fortress of influence Camilla believed she had successfully constructed over the last 30 years. Her journey from the most reviled woman in Britain to the crowned queen. Consort was a masterclass in psychological public relations and relentless calculated patience. She weathered the bitter fallout of the 1990s, methodically chipping away at the lingering luminous legacy of Princess Diana. Once the crown was physically placed upon her head at Westminster Abbey, her confidence mutated into something far more dangerous. She began to operate under the assumption that time and persistence had permanently erased the past, and that she had finally crossed the threshold into absolute untouchable security. But this illusion of absolute power reached its terrifying peak during the recent months of the king's medical vulnerabilities. As Charles was forced to step back from the grueling daily demands of the state, a profound vacuum of authority opened up at the heart of the firm. Instead of acting as a quiet, supportive consort, Camilla reportedly saw a historic opportunity to consolidate her narrative and establish what palace insiders quietly referred to as a shadow regency. She became the ultimate gatekeeper. She managed the flow of information, heavily filtered the access of senior courtiers, and began subtly dictating the terms of the king's official engagements. In her mind, she was no longer just the king's wife. She was the operational co-monarch holding the entire fragile apparatus of the state together. She felt invincible, insulated by the heavy velvet ropes of an institution she believed she had finally conquered. With this perceived absolute immunity, Camilla initiated her most audacious and ultimately fatal maneuver. The focal point of this secret power grab was the fast-approaching Trooping the Color, the most sacred visual centerpiece of the royal calendar. The Buckingham Palace balcony is not merely a platform for family photographs. It is the ultimate constitutional real estate. Who stands on that balcony dictates the visual hierarchy of the state and broadcasts the permanent, legitimate future of the Windsor dynasty. Utilizing her trusted private aides and operating entirely outside the established chain of command, Camilla began quietly altering the master guest lists and staging protocols for the day. Her objective was a staggering exploitation of her current status. She orchestrated a complex administrative push to elevate her non-royal children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, into the primary balcony formation. To the outside world, this might have been spun as a modern blended family showing unity during a difficult time. But behind palace doors, it was recognized as a ruthless campaign of institutional erasure. It was an attempt to siphon sovereign prominence away from the legitimate bloodline and secure a permanent, untouchable visual dynasty for her own family before the political winds shifted. She believed that with the king under her complete management, the sprawling bureaucracy of the crown was simply too vast and too intimidated to challenge her directives. That assumption was her fatal miscalculation. The modern monarchy, now heavily influenced by the fiercely protective oversight of Prince William, operates with forensic precision. William, who now controls the vast billion-dollar machinery of the Duchy of Cornwall, does not miss subtle shifts in administrative paper trails. During a standard top-level review of the trooping the color security matrix and visual broadcasting parameters, auditors directly linked to the Prince of Wales flagged a glaring anomaly. The hidden choreography exposed Camilla's discreet attempt to smuggle her bloodline onto the constitutional stage. To Prince William, this was not merely a breach of event etiquette. It was a severe security threat and a direct, calculated insult to the uncomplaining sacrifice of Princess Catherine. Catherine has spent well over a decade respecting the rigid institutional boundaries that Camilla was now actively trying to bypass for her own commercial and social gain. Furthermore, for William, this aggressive maneuvering was a painful, immediate echo of the backroom manipulation that had caused his late mother so much agonizing paranoia. The intelligence quickly reached William's desk, and the reaction was not a screaming match in the echoing corridors of Clarence House. It was a cold, silent, and absolute institutional execution. William did not leak tearful complaints to the press. He did not engage in the trashy commercial desperation that so often plagues those adjacent to the crown. Instead, he utilized the majestic, immovable machinery of the state to execute a masterstroke of retaliation. Working in complete alignment with the highest levels of the constitutional government and the most senior figures of the military command, Prince William quietly activated what is now being recognized as the 2026 Royal Decree. This was a profound, unprecedented transfer of executive staging authority directly into the hands of the heir to the throne, bypassing the Queen's office entirely. What looked like a routine administrative update regarding event security was actually a total dismantling of her empire. William weaponized the precise bureaucratic systems Camilla had tried to exploit. Days before the event, the access codes for Camilla's extended family and her most trusted private aides were quietly reviewed and systematically downgraded. The exceptional VIP status that would have allowed them entry into the sovereign staging rooms was revoked under the direct, unassailable authorization of the Prince of Wales. They were forced back into the standard side door entry procedures reserved for non-working guests. William essentially drew an impenetrable ironclad boundary around the Windsor legacy, cutting off Camilla's access to the illusion of power. But the true devastation of this silent retaliation was reserved for the balcony itself. As the carriages returned to Buckingham Palace and the royal family gathered in the center room behind the famous glass doors, the atmosphere was suffocatingly tense. Camilla, adorned in exquisite couture and expecting her meticulously planned triumph, looked around for her inner circle only to realize they were nowhere to be found. They had been stopped at the gates, their passes rendered useless by the supreme administrative authority of the heir. And then, the trap entirely snapped shut. As the military bands struck up the national anthem and the doors opened to the world, the physical staging of the family was a masterclass in visual warfare. William had flawlessly rearranged the order of precedence. Camilla stepped out expecting to be the absolute center of gravity. Instead, through the subtle, unyielding physical presence of the core bloodline, she found herself gently but firmly repositioned toward the extreme margins of the balcony. The realization hit her with crushing, inescapable force. Standing at the absolute center, radiating a quiet, unshakable power, was Princess Catherine. Catherine did not scramble for position. She did not need to manufacture access or alter palace protocols. Her power is absolute because it is legitimate, forged through unyielding loyalty and the undeniable reality that she is the mother of the future king. As the world's press captured the image, the international media entirely bypassed the Queen Consort, focusing their lenses exclusively on the spectacular unified front of Charles William and Catherine. In that singular, terrifying moment, Camilla realized that her 30-year campaign for supremacy was a hollow victory. The decree had been signed, the boundaries had been permanently drawn, and as the roar of the crowds echoed across London, she recognized that she was entirely trapped in a system now, commanded by the son of the woman she had tried to replace. The roar of the military flypast over Buckingham Palace provided the perfect sonic camouflage for a structural execution. As the royal family stepped back inside the center room, away from the blinding glare of the public eye and the flashing cameras, the temperature dropped instantly. The rigid, practiced smiles vanished from every face. Camilla turned to King Charles, her eyes seeking the immediate, furious intervention she assumed her husband would unleash on her behalf. For more than 3 decades, Charles had broken traditions, faced down prime ministers, and defied his own family to protect her and elevate her status. She demanded to know who had authorized the sudden downgrade of her children's security passes, who had altered the staging protocols behind her back, and why the sovereign's own wife had been pushed to the literal margins of the British state during its most important visual broadcast. But what she encountered in that private drawing room was the most devastating betrayal of her 30-year game: absolute, unrelenting silence. King Charles did not summon his private secretary to demand answers. He did not launch an immediate investigation into the Prince of Wales's office or order the military command to explain the sudden shift in protocol. Instead, he simply looked away, adjusting his uniform and refusing to meet his wife's panicked, demanding gaze. This is the psychological climax of the entire saga. Charles is an aging monarch who finally understands a fundamental, terrifying truth that Camilla has spent decades trying to ignore. The survival of the British crown no longer relies on his personal happiness or his emotional attachments. It rests entirely on the continuity of the bloodline. To overrule William's 2026 royal decree would be to declare war on his own heir, to destabilize the very throne he spent a lifetime waiting to inherit. Charles's silence was not an act of sudden cruelty. It was an act of profound institutional capitulation. He chose the preservation of the House of Windsor over the social ambition of the Parker Bowles lineage. That deafening silence exposed the terrifying architecture of Camilla's commercial desperation. To the casual observer, she appears as a billionaire in optics, draped in priceless historic jewels, moving through vast ancient palaces and surrounded by a sprawling apparatus of state luxury. But behind the dazzling public relations machinery lies a brutal, unyielding financial reality. Camilla owns absolutely nothing. She does not control the sprawling, billion-dollar real estate and investment empire of the Duchy of Cornwall. That belongs entirely to Prince William. She holds no legal equity in Sandringham, Balmoral, or Buckingham Palace. She does not command the independent sovereign revenues. Every luxury she enjoys, from the state vehicles that chauffeur her to the private apartments she occupies at Clarence House, is effectively an institutional lease that terminates the exact moment the current reign ends. This total lack of actual ownership is precisely why the shadow regency and the balcony power grab mattered so much. Camilla knows that she is racing against a ticking clock that cannot be paused. When King Charles is gone, her status drops instantly to that of a dowager queen, a historic title with zero sovereign authority and no operational power. Her financial security, her place of residence, and her entire footprint within the state will be completely dictated by the benevolence of King William V. Her frantic attempt to weave her children into the official fabric of the monarchy was a desperate scramble to secure permanent social and institutional collateral before her protective shield vanished forever. By weaponizing the rigid protocol of the state and freezing her out, William did not just protect a balcony. He permanently severed her ability to build an independent financial fortress for her bloodline. Standing in stark, devastating contrast to this commercial panic is the unyielding, quiet ascent of Princess Catherine. While Camilla has spent a lifetime relying on backdoor maneuvers, calculated public relations campaigns, and bureaucratic manipulation to secure a fragile foothold, Catherine has mastered the institution through absolute discipline and genuine public affection. She does not need to alter guest lists, rewrite protocols, or negotiate for proximity to the throne. Her power is legitimate, permanent, and deeply woven into the very fabric of the monarchy's survival as the mother of the future king. William's aggressive enforcement of the 2026 royal decree was at its core a defensive shield erected to protect Catherine's future reign. He is ensuring that when his wife steps onto the global stage as queen, the court will be completely cleansed of opportunistic distractions and rival non-royal factions operating in the shadows. The forensic proof of this permanent shifting of power is now visible to anyone who knows how to read the subtle clues embedded in daily palace operations. In the days following the balcony collapse, the administrative correction accelerated behind closed doors with chilling efficiency. Insiders noted that the access protocols for Camilla's personal staff were quietly audited and severely tightened. Certain private wings of the palace, where her aides once moved with casual authority, have been placed under a strict bureaucratic quarantine, requiring direct written clearance from the Prince of Wales's office. Even the visual landscape of the palaces is changing. Portraits and photographs featuring her extended family, once placed in secondary drawing rooms to project the image of a modern, blended monarchy, have been quietly rotated out of sight and placed into deep storage. Queen Camilla may still wear the historic diamonds and execute the public duties required of her rank, but the absolute power she thought she had conquered has been permanently exposed as a fragile mirage. The 2026 royal decree was her ultimate institutional reckoning, proving that in the high-stakes warfare of the British monarchy, the system always corrects itself to ensure the survival of the bloodline. The illusion of her supremacy has shattered, leaving behind the cold reality of an unstoppable transition, as the Prince and Princess of Wales steadily take control of the crown's destiny. The true mechanisms of royal survival are being rewritten in real time. If you value this level of forensic analysis and want to understand the real power plays unfolding behind palace gates, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Leave your thoughts in the comments below on how this permanent shift in balance will reshape the future of the monarchy. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next breakdown.